The Buccaneers' schedule has officially been released, and they kick things off in Atlanta. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live schedule reaction episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credential member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. The toughest stretch, the easiest stretch, week by week predictions, all coming up in a little bit. But let's start this off with the official schedule for the Buccaneers this season. They start off with back-to-back road games, but it looks like this. Week 1, they are at Atlanta. It's the first time they're opening up against a division opponent since 2020. That game is going to be at 1 o'clock. Week 2, they're on the road again, this time in prime time at Houston on Monday Night Football. Week 3, their home opener against the New York Jets at 1 o'clock. Week 4, they host the Philadelphia Eagles at 1 o'clock. Week 5, back on the road at Seattle at 4:05. Week 6, home against the Niners. That's a 1 o'clock game. Week 7, at Detroit, again on Monday Night Football. Week 8, they're at New Orleans. That's a 4:05 kickoff. Then week 9, we all get a break. They get a bye. We get a bye. We can just kick back and watch football and not stress about a single thing. Then they're back at it week 10 against the Patriots at 1 o'clock. And unfortunately, I don't think my prediction is coming true that they induct Tom Brady into the Ring of Honor in that one, because it's being broadcast by CBS. So Tom Brady will be somewhere else in the NFL world that week. Week 11, they are at Buffalo at 1 o'clock. Week 12, Sunday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams in Los Angeles. Week 13, they host the Cardinals at 1 o'clock. Week 14, they host the Saints at 1 o'clock. Week 15, they host the Falcons on Thursday Night Football. Week 16, they're at Carolina. That's a 4:30 kickoff. Week 17, at Miami. That's a 1 o'clock game. And then week 18, again, facing the Carolina Panthers, this time at home, the time to be announced. So the first thing that jumps out are the prime time games. Right off the bat, they have one in week 2 against the Texans. We all remember what happened the last time the Bucs took on the Texans and that defensive collapse. That led to me going on a huge rant on the show about Todd Bowles and his future with the team. But this is going to be an interesting game. Of course, you'll have a reunion and a likely jersey swap of former teammates C.J. Stroud and Emeka Egbuka, but this isn't going to be like the last time. Then the primetime game against the Rams is not on Thanksgiving. Instead, it's the week before. So I don't think Pat Donovan was wrong in his announcement that I talked about a couple of episodes ago. Evan Klosky mentioned it on yesterday's episode. I think whoever told him that counted the weeks wrong and genuinely thought that was going to be Thanksgiving week. The Lions being on Monday Night Football was too good to pass up. We talked about it on my prediction episode that this is the 4th time in 3 years that these two teams are going to face off, and it's going to have major playoff implications. Not only that, but that's a tough stretch for the Lions. So the Bucs could be catching them at the right time. The Lions are at Cincinnati for a 4:25 game, then at Kansas City on Sunday night, then home to face the Bucs on Monday night. That is a tough stretch. So that could be really interesting. Now, we're going to get into the Bucs' toughest stretch in a little bit, but the Bucs don't exactly have a cakewalk leading up to that game either. And then finally, the Thursday night game with the Falcons for the second straight season. That's another big one. Now, this time, the Thursday night game is at home, and the Falcons could very well be a completely different team compared to the one that we see to open the season in week 1. Think of how different the Washington Commanders were from week 1 to week 15 last season. Now, I'm not saying that Michael Penix is going to be Jaden Daniels, but while he already has a little bit of starting experience, we still don't really know what or who he is or what he's going to be as a starting NFL quarterback. That is going to be an absolute dogfight, and it is the second game in a wild 5-game stretch for the Buccaneers. Some other interesting notes are that, one, at least I got one of my predictions right where I had the Patriots as the week 10 opponent. We will see if I'm right about that being the throwback game or not, but there were a couple where I was 1 week off. I had the Texans in week 3, they're week 2. Had the Lions in week 8, they're week 7. Had the Dolphins in week 16, they're week 17. I had the Bucs opening with the Panthers as a divisional opponent. Instead, they get a divisional opponent in the Falcons. So the Rams were off by a week because of whoever gave Pat Donovan the heads up, counted the weeks wrong. But we were close on some of these. So I'm going to give myself a mini pat on the back for being at least in the general vicinity. Primetime games, I had the Lions and Rams right, the Eagles and Bills wrong, but I did call out the Falcons as a sleeper primetime game. Shout out to Evan Klosky, though, on his appearance on Wednesday. He had the Falcons, Rams, and Lions. He missed on the Bills. So, it's an interesting schedule, to say the least. I will also mention the preseason opponents. The Bucs will host the Titans, then they're at Pittsburgh, and then they host the Bills, which I think is kind of weird because you're hosting the Bills in the third preseason game, which some teams use as a dress rehearsal. Some use the second preseason game. It's all kind of up in the air now, but they're going to see the Bills in week 11. So you're playing the Bills in the preseason and you're playing them in the regular season. I thought that was a little bit interesting, but I do want to jump into the chat real quick because I did see a message that I want to get to right out of the gate. Where to go? Destined for greatness. Let's go. James, my 5-year-old, won their flag football championship. That is awesome. Destin had texted me earlier. He is an insider and said that he may miss the live because his son has a championship flag football game. So let's all give some love to Destin's son for winning that championship. That is absolutely awesome. Narav in the chat, I'm hyped. Falcons off the jump. They've been chirping about the sweep last year, so I hope we can come out swinging. Absolutely. That is it's going to set the tone because you don't want to open up the season with a divisional loss. Now, to be fair, the last time the Bucs opened up a season with a divisional opponent, they did lose that game and go on to win the Super Bowl. But I saw some Falcons fans chirping on Twitter about the last time they opened the season against the Buccaneers, they went to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But again, I will warn you, the Michael Penix that we see in week 1 may not be the Michael Penix that we end up seeing in week 15 in that primetime game. Let's see. We got Stu who says that he's excited for the Texans game. I am too. That's going to be a sneaky good game. You look at it, it's like, oh, it's the Texans and Bucs. It's not going to get a lot of national attention. But diehard football fans are going to know that is going to be a fight. It is going to be a really, really good game. Raymond, I'll be at Bucs versus Rams. I love that. I hope they win it for you. David in the chat, he says the She-Gulls and the Falcons. I enjoy that thoroughly. Brian in the chat says weeks 4 through 7 is going to be a tough go. Well, Brian, I'm glad you mentioned that because where is the toughest stretch and where can the Bucs gain some ground? I'm covering that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. NBA playoffs are in full swing and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The Indiana Pacers have made it to the Eastern Conference Finals for the second year in a row, but it's the Oklahoma City Thunder that are still the overwhelming favorites to win the title at minus 140, followed by the New York Knicks at plus 490, the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 600, and the Indiana Pacers at plus 700. New to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make sure you are the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's talk about the toughest and easiest stretches here. The first one that jumps out to me, much like Brian, who mentioned it in the chat before we hit the break, it's weeks 4 through 7. You're home against the Eagles. Then you have to travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, home against the Niners, and then at the Lions on Monday night. Now, we don't know what Seattle is going to be this year, but that travel is, I believe, the longest road trip in the NFL this season, not counting the international games. That's a tough draw to fly all the way out to Seattle, not to mention it's sandwiched between the Eagles and the Niners. Now, I would expect the Niners to be much better than they were last year, so don't look at their win-loss total from 2024 and think that that's going to be an easier game. Then you have to get back on the road to face the Lions in their house on prime time. That is a nasty, nasty stretch. But I think the toughest stretch for the Bucs is the final 5 weeks. Home against the Saints, home against the Falcons in primetime, at Carolina, at Miami, home against Carolina. And look, I know we don't expect the Saints to be a good team this year, but division games are always tough. Now, the Bucs have 4 of them in the final 5 weeks, plus a trip to Miami. Miami could very well be fighting for their playoff lives at that point in the season. The Panthers, I think we all believe that they're going to be better than last year. So you have a situation where all three teams in the NFC South get to square off with you and try to knock you off the mountaintop 4 times in a span of 5 weeks. That is rough for the Bucs. Now, there's no doubt that they could also make a big run in that same span and end up winning 4 out of 5. This kind of sets up like last year, where the perceived weaker teams are more in the second half of the season rather than the first half. In the first half, you have the Texans, you have the Eagles, the Lions, the Niners, plus opening with a road divisional game against a very, very good defense. The second half, you have the Saints twice, the Patriots, the Cardinals, the Panthers twice. The only playoff teams from last year in the second half of the season are the Rams and the Bills, and you face them back to back. But that stretch from week 14 through 18 is going to be extremely difficult and could make or break their playoff chances. As for the easiest stretch, I've looked at this schedule. The insiders I had been texting all day long with different leaks, and I ended up sending out the finalized schedule. I can't remember what time it was. It was probably around 4:30, 5 o'clock that it had finally all been pieced together. But I've been looking at this schedule for a while, and I don't really see more than a 2-week span that I would call easy. You have the Cardinals and Saints in weeks 13 and 14, but that Saints game in week 14 also kicks off my toughest stretch. You have the Saints in week 9 and then the Patriots in week 10, the Saints in week 8 and then the Patriots in week 10 with the bye sandwiched in there. But other than that, I don't think there's a span of games that could really be considered easy. What's really wild about the tough stretch that I named is that it could also turn out to be the easiest. If the Panthers and Falcons aren't as good as I expect them to be, again, Falcons for sure defensively, but the Panthers as a whole, they came on strong late. They added some phenomenal pieces. I expect them to kind of hover around 500 and give some teams some real fits. But if Bryce Young and the Panthers take a step back and Penix is an absolute mess, that stretch could wind up looking a lot like the end of the Bucs 2024 season, where they just started mowing through teams. But honestly, I really like how this schedule is laid out. They never have more than 2 consecutive road games. They get 3 straight at home late in the year, with 2 divisional opponents in that 3-game stretch. And they never really go on the road to places like Buffalo or Seattle late in the season, where all of a sudden the cold weather becomes a factor. It's really not a bad draw this time around. I know there have been times in the past where Bucs fans have gotten really angry. David and I have talked on this show about what a joke it was that the Bucs were on the road for over a month straight. Or last year when they had 3 primetime games in a span of 4 weeks or something stupid like that. There really isn't any of that this time around. The primetime games are spread out. The road trips are minimal, and it's evened out with home games. You have back-to-back road games to open things up, then you're back-to-back at home. You're back-to-back on the road in weeks 11 and 12, then 3 straight at home. Then you're back-to-back on the road, then you finish at home. You don't have a terrible bye week like in week 5 or week 6. Instead, it's pretty much right in the middle of the season. You get a week 9 bye. So you play 8 games in the first half. You play 9 games in the second half. Like, that's as perfect as you're going to get. The only way that it's closer is if your bye is in week 10. So all in all, I don't really think the Bucs got dealt too bad of a hand by the schedule makers this time around. They have some tough teams, but they also have some easy teams. You have a revenge game in week 3 with Hassan Reddick getting to face the Jets. You have some really nice storylines sprinkled in throughout the season to go along with some stretches where the Bucs could end up winning 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5. So, overall, I really like this schedule. I think it's going to keep the season interesting. I think it's going to keep it really fun. And I don't really look at it at any of these moments where it's a true hindrance. I would say it's going to be tough to play at Detroit in prime time. And then because of the short week playing on Monday, you have to go to New Orleans to face them for the first time this season. But again, those are 2 teams that the Bucs are more than capable of beating. All right, let's jump back into the chat again. Lakita, I just got 2 tickets to Bucs at Falcons week 1. Let's go. I love that. Represent the Bucs in Atlanta. Bat W. 49ers are not what they were. Too hot for the Eagles. Detroit will be tough. So we're 9-1 going into Buffalo. Ooh, that's optimistic. I hope you're right, but that's pretty optimistic. Give me just a second. Still some lingering effects of that cold, and I didn't want to cough in all of your ears. David says, might go to Pittsburgh for preseason. It's only $30 a ticket right now. David, I'm going to tell you from personal experience. In fact, it was this coming weekend last year that I went to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is by far one of the worst cities I have ever been in. The infrastructure of downtown Pittsburgh is an absolute nightmare. So if you go, I wish you the best, but driving through downtown is the worst downtown I have ever driven through. And you are talking to someone who has driven through downtown Boston. I've driven through downtown New York City. Like, I've driven through the Bronx, and nothing was worse than driving through Pittsburgh. So I wish you the absolute best if you make that trip. Narov says, looking at the schedule, I like the bye week better than before. It's a great draw for the Bucs in that bye week. I absolutely love that. Eric in the chat, I have a feeling those last 3 games, especially those 2 with the Panthers, are going to decide if they get a 5th division title. I think you're right. I think that could be a situation where it's going to make or break the Bucs season. It's oof. It gives me shivers. That's why I named it my toughest stretch. When you have 4 division games in a 5-week span, that is tough, especially when at least 2 of those teams could very well be in the hunt for that division title that you're going after, and you are going to get their absolute best shot. David in the chat says 13-4 record. David, I'm not going to post your other comment. It has no language. Destined for greatness. I think we start the season 4-1. Well, lucky for you guys, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to go week by week, and I'm going to predict the outcome of the season. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a live schedule release reaction episode of Locked On Bucs. And all right, this is either going to go really well or completely awful. There's no in between. I am going to predict week by week how the Bucs season is going to go. I reserve the right to change my mind. It is May 14th. So if I'm doing these crossovers or I'm doing my Friday live prediction episodes and I say something different than what I'm about to say right now, don't hold me to it. It's May. A lot of things can change between now and then. But let's start things off. Week 1 at Atlanta to start the season. Book it. That's a win. Bucs are 1-0. Week 2 at the Texans, Monday Night Football. The Buccaneers have not won a regular season primetime game since the arrival of Baker Mayfield. Will they get it done this season? Yes, it's going to happen in the first primetime game. They beat the Texans in a nail-biter that is going to have all of us stressing out to the absolute max, but the Bucs go 2-0. Week 3 against the Jets, that's a win. That is an absolute dub. The Bucs are 3-0. Week 4 against the Eagles. The Bucs have won 6 of the last 7 meetings against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have won 3 of the last 4 in Tampa. They lose this one. So that puts them at 3-1. At Seattle, long road trip, but the Bucs are going to get a win. I don't know what Seattle is right now. I have no idea what their identity is. I have no idea what they're doing offensively. I have no idea what they're doing defensively. That team doesn't make any sense to me. The Bucs are going to win that one pretty easily. Week 6 against the Niners, I got that one chalked up as a loss. I think coming off of a big win on the road against Seattle, in the Monday Night Football game against the Lions the following week, the Bucs might get caught looking ahead a little bit. That one's going to be a loss. Bring them back down to earth a little. They are 4-2. Monday Night Football in Detroit, I got that one as a loss. The Bucs are 4-3. Week 8 at New Orleans, bounce back right there. Convincing win over the New Orleans Saints. They're 5-3. Then they got the bye week, week 10 against the New England Patriots. Probably the creamsicle game. We'll have to wait to find out, but they win that one easily. They are 6-3. Week 11 at Buffalo, taking on Josh Allen in that insane Bills offense. That's going to be another one that comes down to whoever has the ball last. I have the home team with the advantage. Bucs lose that one. They fall to 6-4. At Los Angeles, Sunday Night Football, that's a win. The Bucs are going to win another primetime game, so they are 2-1 on the season in primetime, but they are 7-4 overall. Back home against the Cardinals, that's a win. They're 8-4. Week 14, home against the Saints, that's a win. They're 9-4. Thursday Night Football, hosting the Falcons, that's a win. They're 3-1 in primetime, 10-4 on the season. Week 16 at Carolina, that's a loss. I'm going to give Carolina played them so tough in Carolina last year. I think that's going to be another tough one. That might be an overtime game, but the Bucs fall to 10-5. Then they travel to Miami to take on the Dolphins. That's a win, 11-5. Final game of the season, week 18, hosting the Panthers. I got that as a win. The Bucs finish the season 12-5. That's how I see it going right now. There's always those games where the Bucs should probably lose and they end up winning. There's those games that they should probably win and they end up losing. That's kind of where I try to piece this thing together, though I don't think I really had a game that they should lose. And I have them winning. Like, I have them losing to the Eagles. I have them losing to the Lions. I have them losing to the Bills, maybe the Rams. That might be kind of the game that on the road in Los Angeles in prime time should probably lose that one, especially with as high as a lot of people are on the Rams. Puka Nacua is incredible. They have Devontae Adams. My big question that late in the season is, how healthy is Matthew Stafford going to be? He has fought through some injuries over the last couple of years. I'm going to err on the side of caution here, saying Matthew Stafford's probably far from 100% by the time these two teams meet. I think that's really where the Bucs are going to be able to gain an advantage. Let's see. Let's jump into the chat. Let's see what some of your guys' predictions are. Justin says, I love the realism, James. I try. I try to be as honest as I possibly can. I'm not going to pick the Bucs to win every week. The Bucs are not going 17-0. It's just not going to happen. So I'm thrilled when I pick the Bucs to lose a game and then I get to come on here and talk about them winning. I'm infuriated when I pick them to win and I have to come on and talk about them losing, especially to teams that they should beat. Let's see. We got Narav. The question is, when we make the playoffs, how deep are we going? Let's pump the brakes. I do believe, obviously, with a 12-5 record that I'm predicting here on May 14th, I believe the Bucs are making the playoffs. Let's wait and see what seed they are. Let's wait and see what kind of draw they have, which teams are hot going into the playoffs. I think at minimum, this team is getting to the divisional round. They were close to going to the divisional round last year. The Commanders got a huge win with a doink field goal at the end of regulation, and that was created by some bad Bucs mistakes. You had a couple of botched snaps by Graham Barton. You had a bad handoff exchange by Baker Mayfield that resulted in a turnover. So the Bucs shot themselves in the foot a couple of times in that game. I think with the addition of Hassan Reddick, with the addition of David Walker, with Benjamin Morrison, with Jacob Parrish, with Emeka Ibuka, with a healthy Evans, with a healthy Godwin, with Bucky Irving being the RB1 right out of the gates, this is such a dangerous football team. So dangerous. So I think that at minimum, we are talking about how they're probably poised for the divisional round. But again, we have to wait and see what the matchups are. Let's go ahead and let's go to G Vegas. I haven't seen G Vegas in the chat yet so far. Bucs should go to the NFC Championship if most of the team stays healthy. Eagles and Vikings have brutal travel schedules. You know who else has a brutal travel schedule? The Lions. I was talking to my buddy who's a huge Lions fan, and he was saying that he's going to be thrilled if they end up with the wild card because of how brutal their road schedule is this year. The Vikings, I know a lot of people are still high on them. I don't really know what to make of them. JJ McCarthy is going to really make or break their season. We don't know what he is at the NFL level, but the Vikings have talent up and down the field. But I mean, if it ends up being the Lions that are in the wild card and they have to come to Tampa, I like their chances there. I like their chances of seeing them a second time this season, a fifth time in 3 years, and being able to beat them at home. I like their chances against a team like the Packers. I like their chances against a team like the Eagles. So we just kind of have to see how all of that lines up. Brian wants to stray from the schedule. I'll touch on this real quick. What do you think about our kicking game? And then he specifically says punting. I think it's going to be vastly improved over what it was last year. You go out, you sign Dixon, who's a solid, reliable punter. You're not going to be changing punters 2, 3, 4 times throughout the year. Their kicking game is solid with Chase McLaughlin. We know McLaughlin is fantastic. He's good from 50 plus. Their return game is going to be completely different than it was last year because, number one, you're not going to have Bucky returning kicks anymore. But number two, you have Tez Johnson now who's going to be returning the punts. You're not going to have Trey Palmer back there. I think the special teams is going to be vastly improved over what it was last year. Lakita going to finish things off. I'm just glad we are getting some primetime games. back-to-back years, they've had 4 primetime games. And I think that's about, that's what I said they should get. That's what Evan said they should get. It's right in line with what they had last year. They, as a team, were pretty much right in line with what they were last year. So I thought 4 was a really good number, and I love these primetime matchups. The Bucs just have to win. They have to win in prime time. If you're going to go deep in the playoffs, you have to be able to shine underneath the brightest lights. It starts week 2, Monday Night Football in Houston. That is going to be a huge game. Houston doesn't mess around. I don't care how weak the AFC South is. Houston is a darn good football team. That is going to be an absolute battle. All right. Finally, last one. Destined. If our defense bounces back this year, we are competing for a top 2 seed. I 100% agree. Based on the health of the team and the defensive improvements, this can be a 1 or a 2 seed in the NFC. That's going to do it for this episode. Of course, I will be back tomorrow with more news and reaction about the Buccaneers. In the meantime, of course, check out everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on so you know when I do these live shows and you can jump in the live chat and join everybody else. Thank you all so much who came through. I know a lot of places are doing live reaction shows right now. I appreciate you guys coming through with me. I love each and every one of you. And of course, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.